London, December 1814. The crystal chandeliers of Lady Finchley's Grosvenor Square house burned bright with thousands of beeswax candles, their golden light spilling across marble floors polished until they shone like glass. Outside, snow drifted softly from the night sky, brushing the tall windows with quiet grace. Inside, the annual Christmas ball moved in perfect rhythm, silk gowns whispering, jewels catching the light, laughter floating above the steady music of a string quartet. Victoria Ann Sinclair stood just beyond the edge of that brilliance. She remained behind a line of potted palms near the cardroom entrance, her gray silk gown simple beside the bold colors and daring cuts worn by younger women. At 28, she had mastered the art of being unnoticed. Society had taught her well. She was not beautiful in the way men admired, not young enough to inspire excitement, not rich enough, as far as anyone knew, to make her worth the trouble. Her chestnut hair was arranged neatly without curls or ornaments. Her face was calm, practiced, and composed. For 3 seasons she had endured polite smiles that never reached the eyes, conversations that ended too quickly, and introductions that led nowhere. She had learned how to stand still and quiet, how to exist without expectation. What no one in that glittering house suspected was that Victoria could have bought the very building they danced in, along with much of the square surrounding it, without troubling her banker in the slightest. She had not meant to linger near the card room. She had been searching for the retiring room when a familiar voice struck her, like ice. "The matrimonial market this season is thin, gentlemen," said Nicholas Edward Carlyle, Duke of Bramwell. His voice carried the ease of a man long used to being heard and obeyed. "Miss Arabella Hampton brings barely £5,000, though her father insists on calling it a fortune. Miss Weatherby might manage 8 if one includes her mother's jewels, half of which are likely paste." Laughter followed, sharp and careless. Victoria froze, her fingers tightening against the doorframe. Another man spoke. "And the others?" "Lord Gerald Fitzwilliam." She recognized the voice easily. A gambler. A second son with debts whispered about across Mayfair. "The others," the Duke replied with amusement, "are those unfortunate creatures lingering at the edges of ballrooms, hoping someone might notice them. Lady Margaret Ashworth is pleasant enough, though her father's debts are legendary. As for Miss Sinclair," he continued, his tone turning dismissive, "the woman behind those palms, good heavens, she must be nearing 30. Plain as a pikestaff. Normal figure. What could she possibly offer beyond dull respectability and perhaps £2,000 if one is generous?" The words landed with precision. For 20 years, Victoria had trained herself to accept such judgments with dignity. She had smiled, remained silent, and carried herself with quiet pride. But something inside her broke free in that moment. Years of restraint burned away, replaced by a fierce clarity she had never allowed herself to feel. She stepped forward. Her gray gown rustled softly as she moved into the corridor light. Conversations nearby faltered. Several gentlemen turned, sensing tension. "Your Grace," Victoria said, her voice calm but strong. "How fascinating that you feel so confident judging the worth of women you have never properly met." The Duke emerged from the card room. He was tall, dark-haired, and undeniably handsome in a restrained aristocratic way. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized her. "Miss Sinclair," he said smoothly, recovering quickly. "I did not realize you were standing so close. I apologize if my words caused offense." The apology was empty, polite, weightless. Victoria felt her heart beat steady. "Since you are so interested in numbers," she said, "perhaps you would like to know that your estimate is off by more than your arithmetic can manage." A hush spread. Lady Finchley appeared from the ballroom. Fan paused mid-air. Lord Fitzwilliam stared openly. The Duke frowned, faint confusion crossing his face. "Miss Sinclair, I am certain your circumstances are respectable. I meant no real insult." "Then allow me to correct you," Victoria replied. Her spine straightened. Her voice carried without effort. "I own half of London." Silence followed, thick and absolute. Faces turned toward her in disbelief. Someone gasped. Lady Finchley's fan snapped open sharply. Victoria continued, each word firm. From docks along the river to squares in Mayfair, my properties generate more in monthly rent than your estates have produced in years. But please, continue explaining how my appearance and supposed £2,000 make me unworthy of notice. The Duke's color drained. His composure cracked. Victoria curtsied, perfect and controlled. Good evening, Your Grace. I find I have lost all appetite for this sort of entertainment. She turned and walked away. Behind her, whispers erupted, but she did not look back. For the first time in her life, she was no longer invisible. The carriage ride home through snow-covered streets felt unreal. Victoria sat with her hands folded tightly, her breath shallow but steady. She knew what she had done. Society would not forgive such defiance easily, yet beneath the fear stirred something new and powerful. Freedom. The next morning dawned bright and cold. Sunlight reflected harshly off the snow, filling the Russell Square townhouse with white brilliance. Victoria found her cousin Lydia already waiting in the morning room, teacup untouched, expression caught between horror and awe. The entire city is talking, Lydia said without greeting. Lady Finchley sent a note before breakfast. Victoria poured herself tea calmly. I assume she wishes to know whether the claim was true? Lydia stared. It was true. Yes. Victoria replied. Every word. Lydia sank into her chair. I knew there was money. I did not know there was this. My grandfather believed poverty was no virtue, Victoria said simply. He taught me everything. Before Lydia could speak again, the butler entered. Miss Sinclair, there are 17 calling cards in the hall. More arriving. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. Everything had changed. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Edmund Davenport, a solicitor known for representing old families, requested a private audience. Victoria knew his firm served the Duke of Bramwell. He wishes to apologize, Davenport said carefully, in person. Victoria considered for a long moment. He may call during proper hours, she said at last. With my cousin present. The Duke arrived precisely at 3. He entered with measured steps, bowing deeply. Miss Sinclair, he said, voice stripped of mockery, I am ashamed of my conduct. She listened without interruption as he spoke of regret and ignorance. When he finished, she said quietly, You valued me only when you learned my fortune. I did, he admitted, and I despise that in myself. Something in his honesty unsettled her. I accept your apology, she said at last. But do not mistake forgiveness for trust. Their conversation shifted unexpectedly toward business, land management, and responsibility. When he left, Victoria sat by the fire, troubled by thoughts she did not wish to entertain. Hope was dangerous. Outside, snow began to fall again, and London whispered her name. The days following the Duke of Bramwell's apology unfolded like a storm moving slowly across London. Victoria felt its pressure everywhere she went. Carriages slowed when she passed. Conversation stopped when she entered rooms. People who had ignored her for years suddenly remembered her name. Calling cards arrived every morning. Some belonged to women who had once smiled politely and turned away. Others belonged to men who now found her presence fascinating. Victoria received them all with the same calm courtesy and revealed nothing. Only one visitor returned again and again with consistency and restraint, Nicholas Carlyle. He never arrived unannounced. He brought no extravagant gifts, no declarations. He spoke to her as if she were a thinking person, not a prize. They discussed land repairs, tenant disputes, crop yields, and education for workers' children. Victoria found herself looking forward to these conversations more than she dared admit. Her cousin Lydia noticed everything. He looks at you differently, Lydia said one evening after Nicholas had left. Not like a man counting coins. Victoria did not answer. She was not ready to name what stirred inside her. A week before Christmas, an invitation arrived that surprised them both. Lady Genevieve Hartwell requested Victoria's presence at a private dinner. Lady Hartwell was influential, wealthy, and selective. The note mentioned discussions of property and commerce, and noted that the Duke of Bramwell would attend. The dinner was unlike any Victoria had known. There were no cruel glances or shallow chatter. People spoke of canals, housing, factories, and responsibility. When Victoria spoke of her tenants and the choices she made to protect them, the room listened. She belonged there. Nicholas watched her with open admiration, not pride, not ownership, respect. That night, as her carriage rolled home through the cold streets, Victoria felt something fragile take shape inside her, a sense of possibility. It frightened her more than rejection ever had. 3 days before Christmas, that fragile peace shattered. Richard Finchley arrived without invitation. He entered her drawing room with a smile too sharp to trust. He spoke of family, of concern, of duty. Then he made his demand. "You should not be managing such holdings alone," he said. "It is time a man stepped in. I am prepared to take responsibility." Victoria refused him calmly. His smile vanished. "There are stories," Richard said softly, "about your grandfather. Smuggling, dockside dealings. People might listen if they were shared." The threat was clear. After he left, Victoria sat in silence, fear pressing cold against her ribs. She contacted her solicitor at once. Mr. Winchester confirmed her worst fear. Lies could still destroy. She spent the night preparing records, letters, accounts, proof of honesty, proof of legitimacy. She would not surrender. On Christmas Eve morning, the second blow fell. 5 major tenants broke their leases at once, citing sudden structural concerns. They demanded repayment and compensation, £48,000. It was an attack. Coordinated, ruthless. Victoria could pay, but doing so would leave her exposed. Weak. That evening, Edmund Davenport arrived with an offer. The Duke of Bramwell would lend her the money immediately. Victoria refused. She would not be rescued. Not even by the man who stirred her heart. She paid the sum herself. The cost was heavy. The night colder than any before. Christmas morning came, with snow and silence. Nicholas arrived early, anger and fear clear on his face. "You refused my help," he said. "I chose my independence," Victoria replied. They argued. Not with cruelty, but with pain. With truth. "I need to know," she said, voice trembling, "that you see me, not my fortune." Nicholas knelt before her then, pride stripped away. "I was wrong when I first looked at you," he said, "but I was changed by you. I love you, Victoria. Not for what you own, for who you are." The words shook her. She believed him. She kissed him. When he asked her to marry him, she said yes through tears and laughter and fear all at once. But happiness did not delay consequences. That same afternoon, the Dowager Duchess of Bramwell arrived. Cold. Sharp. Unyielding. She questioned Victoria's worth, her work, her origins. Victoria did not bend. Nicholas did not waver. In the end, the Duchess agreed to the marriage without warmth, but without war, it was enough. Yet danger still lingered. Richard Finchley had not finished. Rumors spread. Whispers sharpened. Questions rose. Victoria and Nicholas stood together now, preparing to face the final test. Not just of wealth or position, but of trust, courage, and partnership. The battle was no longer hers alone, and London was watching. London did not forget scandal easily. The rumors Richard Finchley released moved quickly, slipping through drawing rooms and tea tables, reshaped with every retelling. By the first week of January, whispers followed Victoria wherever she went. Some claimed her grandfather had smuggled goods through the docks. Others suggested stolen land or forged contracts. No proof was ever offered, but proof was rarely required. What Richard had not expected was resistance. Lady Hartwell acted first. She hosted a carefully chosen dinner, inviting merchants, bankers, and landowners who had known Samuel Harrington personally. Victoria attended with Nicholas at her side, calm and composed. Documents were presented: ledgers, letters, affidavits. Men spoke plainly of Samuel Harrington's honesty and discipline. "I trusted him with my money for 20 years, one banker said firmly, "and I never lost a shilling." Another added, "If Samuel Harrington had been a criminal, half this city would not stand." The tone shifted. Not everyone believed the truth, but enough did. The rumors slowed, their sharpest edge dulled. Nicholas approached the problem from another direction. Using his position, he quietly investigated Richard's finances. What he found explained everything. Richard was drowning in debt. Property purchased on credit, speculation gone wrong, payments overdue. He needed Victoria's holdings as collateral. When she refused, he turned cruel. Nicholas arranged a meeting. It took place in the offices of Mr. Winchester, with documents laid neatly across the table. Richard arrived pale and tense. His confidence failed him quickly. The evidence was undeniable. "You will retract every false statement," Nicholas said coldly. "Publicly, you will apologize, and you will sign an agreement never to approach Miss Sinclair again." "And if I refuse?" Richard asked, though his voice lacked strength. "Then your creditors learn everything," Victoria said calmly. Today, Richard signed. His apology came at Lady Finchley's 12th night gathering. It was stiff, awkward, and humiliating, but it was heard. The damage he had done could not be erased entirely, but it was contained. With the threat ended, wedding preparations moved forward. Society buzzed with opinion. Some were curious. Some were offended. Many were eager to witness the union of a duke and a woman who had dared to speak truth. Victoria insisted on clear terms. Her properties would remain under her control. Her work would continue. Her voice would not be silenced by marriage. Nicholas agreed without hesitation. Even the Dowager Duchess, sharp-eyed and guarded, respected the firmness of those terms. The wedding took place in early February at St. George's, Hanover Square. Snow lay lightly on the streets as crowds gathered, eager to glimpse the woman who had challenged a duke and won. Victoria walked down the aisle in ivory silk, her head high, her heart steady. She was not pretending to be something else. She was exactly who she had always been. Nicholas waited, his expression filled with something close to awe. Their vows were simple, honest, equal. When the Archbishop pronounced them husband and wife, applause filled the church, some polite, some genuine, all acknowledging the moment. The reception followed at Bramwell House. Victoria moved through the rooms with grace, receiving congratulations and thin smiles alike. She noticed who stayed to speak and who hurried away. She remembered everything. Lady Hartwell embraced her warmly. "You have changed the rules," she said. "Never forget that." Life after marriage did not soften Victoria. It strengthened her. She continued managing her properties. Nicholas supported her openly. Together, they restored the Bramwell estates, investing in repairs, fair rents, and education for tenants' children. Their partnership became known not for excess, but for results. The Dowager Duchess watched in silence, then slowly, grudgingly, with respect. 5 years passed. On a mild spring morning, Victoria stood in the nursery at Bramwell House, watching her children play. Her eldest lined wooden figures with serious focus. Her daughter laughed freely. The youngest slept peacefully. Nicholas joined her, resting his chin against her shoulder. "Do you remember the Christmas ball?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Victoria said. "Every detail." "That night changed everything." "It did," she agreed. "Because I finally chose myself." She had once stood behind potted palms, believing herself invisible. Now she stood firmly in her life, her worth unquestioned by the only person who mattered. Victoria Sinclair had owned half of London. But more than that, she had claimed her voice, her future, and her place in the world. And she never gave them up.